Welcome into the Get in the Hole podcast. Stephen McAvoy, Max Schreiber joining the desk this week in for John. He's a little busy watching the NBA Finals, so me and Max are taking on the seat. We're here with you on a very, very interesting Monday in the world of golf. Obviously, this past week has been quite the spectacle in the golf world. One of the very few times that golf took over the Sports Center headlines. So it was sort of nice. But here we are in the underground, powered today and always by the good people over at Tomahawk Shades, the best premium small batch eyewear in the industry, keeping you styling and profiling from the first tee to the 18th green and beyond. To go to tomahawkshades.com, use code USP for 25% off for your next purchase. Thank you for joining us wherever you are, however you're listening, wherever you are. Thank you for joining us here, following us on Twitter and Instagram at Get In The Hole Pod, Facebook.com/Get In The Hole, and find our content all over the Underground Network, Twitter and Instagram at Underground PHI, Facebook.com/Underground Sports PHI, Twitch.tv/Underground Sports PHI, and all over the streaming verse, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, and so on. Finally, follow us on YouTube. We're almost at that 200 subscriber mark. We're getting more and more content brewing, and you'll probably get some reaction on the first LIV event from me and John that will show up right there. You can find us as well as our other sponsored shows, OTB, Outside the Box, Streamer Season, and beyond. You can find literally anything from the Underground. So go and find us on Underground Sports Philadelphia on YouTube and join us there. Once again, Steve and Max here per usual every week on the PGA Tour, giving you the news, analysis, and betting wherever you are, wherever you want it. We've got it. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Stephen McAvoy _ You can find Max on Twitter at MaxSchreiber13. Max, fun weekend. We're going to talk everything about LIV, LIV, hashtag Live Laugh Golf, whatever the fuck you want to call it. We'll get into all of that, but to start on a lighter note, how was your weekend? What happened this weekend for yourself?
Watched RBC Canadian Open, the ShopRite on PGA Classic. I didn't watch the Scandinavian mix, but first female winner in DP World Tour history, so that was pretty cool. So a lot of cool storylines coming out of the golf world this weekend. How about Ben Griffin, runner-up Korn Ferry Tour event this weekend, but he got a tour card. I think that's one of the really cool stories. He was working. He retired from the game, or I don't know if retired is the right word. But
he took a break, I think.
Yeah, he decided he wasn't going to do it anymore. He was missing cut after cut on the Latin American tour, and then he was working as a mortgage loan officer, and then he said, I'm gonna try to get back into it, and then look at him now. Less than a year later, he's gonna be next year on the PGA Tour. So I'm not Monday Q info, but pretty cool story.
probably the coolest story that I saw, and I'm drawing a blank on her name. I'm like actively looking her up. A woman who played at the ShopRite Classic this weekend. I think it was 8 months pregnant. Finished 4 under par.
Yeah,
I can't break 90, and yet someone who has a freaking human being inside of her, ready to come out of her, is playing like that at the ShopRite. That was incredible. Mm-hmm. I'm blanking on her name, and I feel so bad because LPGA players don't get the recognition they deserve. Obviously, they are all incredible athletes, and the fact that I'm drawing a blank on her is really lowercase j journalism on my end. Also, Brooke Henderson, who I absolutely love. She's beautiful. She's really good at golf. She won this week. Proud of her. Go England. Except for Ian Poulter. Fuck him. According to Jay Monahan, he's like a terrorist.
Well, and also you guys are Underground Philadelphia. I don't know if you guys saw, but Megan Francella, I believe I pronounced the last name right, I had the opportunity to feature her on, Friday, because she didn't play on the LPGA. I think her last start was 2013, lost her card, did a whole bunch of other stuff, worked in the MLB content offices, then was a tournament director for the LPGA. Anyway, she became a teaching professional in Philadelphia, and then she became a teaching professional in Philadelphia, and then she ended up in the LPGA teaching professional competition tournament, just like the men have for the PGA Championship. She got on the Women's PGA Championship, and she was making start just a quick, short ride away from Philadelphia. I believe she lives in Delaware, but ShopRite Classic this weekend was in right outside of Atlantic City, South Jersey, not my neck of the woods. So Yeah, so pretty cool story. I don't know. Actually, I'm unsure exactly where she finished on the leaderboard, but first day she was only three shots off the lead. So pretty cool story. Just tying it into the Philly gang.
Yeah, no, a lot of really great storylines from the world of golf this week. Obviously, this week is going to be huge. The U.S. Open, one of the bigger events on the PGA calendar. Kind of crazy to think that we're already more than halfway. Actually, we're almost at the 3/4 mark of the PGA year. There's only like 12 more events, quote unquote, left until the playoff swing. This being the third major. Obviously, the U.S. Open is huge for us as Americans. Obviously, the U.S. Open is very much a you see a lot more American amateurs, kind of like it's basically it's obviously the British Open equivalent, but for America, where the British Open you see a lot more qualifiers and exemptions for players that are from Europe and especially England. But the U.S. Open kind of always carries a gravitas around it, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a very patriotic feeling, kind of not as heavy as like a Ryder Cup, but you very much see you very much see the nationalistic pride of Americans coming out supporting them. And honestly, where better to play than at the country club? We're going to talk about it in a bit, but obviously this is the golf course that Francis Ouimet, who grew up in England, came to America, grew up literally right outside of Brookline, Mass, played here, and was the youngest person to ever win a golf tournament and B, a major championship at like 17 years old. The movie version does not do him any justice, considering Shia LaBeouf had the opportunity to play him. Awful actor, in my opinion. Only really should be credible from Holes, but that's a different story for a different day. But with all of this being said, backtracking a little bit to what's happened over the last week, I don't think you can talk about the landscape of the PGA Tour, or really golf in general, ever, without mentioning this past week in golf. Because so much happened. And to be honest with you, I have the notes ready for the show, for an hour-long show. It's going to feature like everything about the U.S. Open. I don't know how I can do an hour to an hour and a half long show, include the U.S. Open, and have enough time to fit in everything about what's happened in the past week of golf between Greg Norman, the awful press conference that Phil Mickelson had earlier today, the fact that Rory, literally 2 minutes after winning a tournament, called the shit out of Greg Norman, the backlash that players got, the fact that the guy who had the longest odds in the first ever LIV event won, Charles Schwartzel, Charles in charge of us all. Like, what the hell happened this week? To be honest with you, I honestly don't know where to start. I think the best place to really start here is Phil, because he's such a big name. So let's start there. Obviously, LIV Golf, as it is now called, is not LIV Golf. It is LIV Golf. Hashtag Live Laugh Golf, according to No Laying Up. It's now the hashtag. It's going to be the biggest thing on the planet. I know it. Phil Mickelson was LIV Laughing Golf all weekend long, despite him going 1 over for the tournament. His team, the High Flyers, finished third. Excuse me. Literally going to have like a heart attack talking about all this stuff. Showed up to the course the first day. He wore a all-black outfit, no sponsors. Obviously, everyone in the world except for Callaway has dropped him. Didn't wear any Callaway merch. Obviously, KPMG got rid of him. Workday got rid of him. Mizzen and Ming got rid of him. Was lathened in only his hat with his logo and a Augusta National logo. And then once he got on the golf course, that vest came off, and he was wearing just straight up all black. Phil also looks like he's like done cocaine every day for the last 4 months. He looks absolutely terrible. Like, I don't know, like, wow. Like, he looks terrible. Max, tell me all about it. What's the deal with Phil? Give me some updates about him at his initial LIV event. And also, let's get into this press conference and how bad it was.
Yeah, so it's funny that you say that, though, about Phil, because I was thinking, last year when he won the PGA, which essentially was, like 54 weeks ago, he looked really good. Like, he was, and he looked really healthy, looked really young. He was really in control. He was really calm. And fast forward a year later, obviously so much since he's won the PGA has transpired since that weekend at Kauai Island. But it's just amazing his fall, because today, for the first time really ever since we've seen him, in public, obviously, he's been in exile since February, he just did not look in control. Ryan Lavner, who writes for golfchannel.com, one of my coworkers, he wrote today how Phil's always the smartest guy in the room. And today he had no answers. And it really shows you that now, even though Phil is back, he's still not the same. It really was weird. It was almost really sad to watch it in a way. He did today, and we're talking about if the listeners aren't aware, he spoke today at the Country Club Monday before the U.S. Open, had a press conference. Usually Monday press conferences are not, big names or anything, but I don't know if anybody saw the picture of all the writers and all the media members in the press conference room. It was wild. So it was jam packed, and he obviously I didn't expect great things. You kind of expected a lot of the things that Phil said today, where just saying, this was the best decision for me. I understand people aren't going to like this, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of the mumbo jumbo that you kind of expected, but he really just didn't look prepared either. Like he's, like I just mentioned, he was always the smartest guy in the room. He was always the witty one. Remember last year after he won the PGA and then he went to Colonial the following week and he shot, I don't know if he missed the cut, but I don't know if this was Thursday or Friday. And they were like, how'd you do? And he was like, well, I won the PGA last week. So I'm really, he always was witty, smart, had a good answer, tried to control the room. And today he did none of that. He looked lost. And I almost think visually too, it looked a little weird because you mentioned it before, Steve. He didn't have his any sponsors. It looked so weird. It looked, I was going to type in my office. I was saying, it almost looks Bush League, like, and it's not even like a Nike or a deal. It's like his own logo. It's like a little sketchy. That's kind of the impression I got, especially with how he looks now too.
I was watching it, and I'm taking my lunch break, and I'm sitting there watching the presser. And first of all, the USGA has done the greatest job at stirring the pot. Jay Monahan is punching air, knowing that all the LIV players are going to be playing this week, and also putting Phil Mickelson as the headlining act, the number one guy, 1:00 on a Monday. The whole world was ready for it. I remember Jason Sobel tweeted out, there's no must-see TV on Monday, but if you want a Monday soap opera, tune in at 1:00. That'll be it. Obviously, the media was shook. They were ready to go. And, obviously, we can laugh all we want and say that Phil looked terrible. And he kind of has. He has that scruffy beard look. Hasn't really ever had that. He looks flushed. He doesn't have that same skin tone that we're kind of used to. He looks very just pale and white. He doesn't look himself. And yeah, the look itself is a problem, but he's sitting there, and for those of you who will watch on YouTube, he's very bunched up and arms close to him. He looked like he was freezing cold the entire interview. He was bunched up, trying to keep warm to himself. He looked nervous. And for the first time in forever, it almost seemed like, you're right, he didn't have the answers, but also everyone knew what they were going to ask. Every single person in that media room, they were going to ask about the sponsorship. They were going to ask about the money. They were going to ask about LIV Golf, and the same questions that were flung from Sky Sports at Ian Poulter and Lee Westwood. If, let's say, Putin had his own tour, would you join it? I remember, I don't know who it was, asked something about 9/11 and how it relates to the Saudis, and what's the correlation here? And he basically waltzed around the question, and people were like, but we're talking about 9/11 here. It was a very weird, but also just he simply didn't look there. And it the way he's dressing too, and this is my final point here. He's been in all black every single day. It feels like I'm going to a funeral. Mm-hmm. Watching his demise in 1 year, how someone can go from being the oldest player to win the PGA to looking like this, and also not even playing well in a really bad field. None of the top players in the world played well in this first LIV event. Dustin Johnson for the first 2 days was 1 over par. No one played particularly well except for the guys who you didn't even know. Henri Duplessis or whatever the hell his name is was the highlight of the entire week. What the hell's going on here? I don't really know, but Phil just did not look there at all.
And one note on Phil, and this is important because Steve, you can relate to this, right? He had a sense of arrogance, which was kind of weird, like, because he looked so lost, but at the same time he had this arrogance, and he kept saying, like, let's keep it to one question. Let's keep it to one question. Obviously, you and me in the media aren't really loving when players don't respect the media, and that wasn't, always the case with Phil, forever. He was, great with the media, etc. But me and you both took Barry Sachs, sports broadcasting in, up at Quinnipiac, and I don't know if we took the exact same course. We both had him as a professor, former Sports Center producer, and he, whenever we were talking about interviewing and asking questions, he always said, keep it to one question, keep it to one question. Don't sneak two answers in there. Or two questions in there, rather. And that's what the media was doing. That's just, it always happens. But for him to stand there and be like, let's keep it to one question, please. Now, Christine Brennan was the one who asked the question about the 9/11 families. There was that report in the New York Post from Brian Wacker, I believe. And, they wrote a letter, some of the 9/11 families. And there was a letter from a man, I believe his name, I have it right here, Terry Strada, wrote the letter, and her husband was on one of the planes in 9/11, et cetera. But that's obviously, the whole thing is engulfed in controversy. If we keep talking about all the different little tidbits, we're going to be here till, past midnight. But point being, she was going, she's a great reporter. Actually, I had the opportunity to meet her when I interned at USA Today Sports, but she was going very long with that question. But he still was like, I read all that. Do you have a point here? So he knew the whole situation. Like, he read that article. So when you find out about that stuff, like, you have an opinion, and he had to have known that he was going to be asked that question, and he still danced around it. And it's not even like he danced around it confidently. He was kind of like spotty, was pausing his answers. Like, he had to know that someone was going to ask that, especially someone like Christine Brennan, who's a national columnist. She doesn't necessarily cover sport, golf. So it's not like, she's going to be asking, a more golf related question. Maybe someone like Stephen McAvoy of Golf Week would be. But, he had to have known. The whole point, I know I keep rambling, is that he had to have known a question like that was coming, and he still didn't look prepared. And then through all of it, he was being arrogant with the reporters. Is there a question here? What's your point? Keep it to one question, please. I was, and then I watched Justin Thomas 2 hours later, and the reporters were asking, two questions at once, and he didn't be like, let's keep it to one question, please. Especially, Thomas is not engulfed in controversy like Phil is, and Phil might want to, dance a little more delicately. That's all.
Well, you noticed too. I mean, every player has had some form of controversy. I remember when JT lost his polo sponsorship because of him saying a slur during a putt.
Yeah.
That day, people were bombarding him, saying like, "Oh, like, are you homophobic?" Like, and his stance was very strong. He was like, "Hey, look, like, sometimes I say things on the golf course that I don't mean, and like, I get it." And he apologized, and he went on his business, but he answered every question with grace. Phil was very defensive. Like you said, he was arrogant. This is the first time that you've kind of seen a very shaken Phil Mickelson. And usually, again, like we said, he's the smartest guy in the room. He knows what's going on. He has control of the room, and he understands what he's there to do. It almost seems like he was told by his publicist, "Hey, you need to go in front of the media for this." And despite, maybe it's a lack of care, for all we know. For all we know, he could have said, "You know what? I don't really care. I'm doing LIV Golf. I'm doing what I want to do. I made $200 million. What do I care now if I lose every single event for the rest of my life?" He said, "Screw it. Let's go." But I think there's more to this Phil situation than just the interview and just the lack of sponsorship and all these different things. I want to backtrack quickly and get your opinion here on this Augusta vest that he wore, because there's been a lot of talk about Jay Monahan speaking to the folks at Augusta National, saying, "Hey, are you going to ban these players from playing?" Obviously, the USGA said, "Might as well let them play." We don't know what the Open is going to do quite yet. We'll see. We'll see on that end. Players are in fact banned from the PGA Championship because, of course, it's ran by the PGA of America. So then, where do the Masters kind of fit in? And we're not going to know much until April, obviously, or at least March of next year. But it kind of seemed like a shot almost at Augusta, saying, "Hey, I'm gonna rep you, and you better kind of back me here." Or when he apologized to everyone before he started up at LIV, it seemed like he was apologizing more so to the Saudi government for his remarks than he was the actual people who he offended. Nothing here seems like Phil really gives a crap. It almost seems like he is here, he's made his money, and he will now live his life out as a typical 50-some-odd-year-old. And whatever happens on the PGA Tour, he knows his rep on the PGA is tarnished. He understands that it's ruined. A guy who was going to be a possible commissioner for the sport is now gone. Someone who should have been a special advisor to the commissioner is now gone. At this point, it's almost showing that Phil will never be number one like he was for all of these years. He's always been second fiddle to Tiger. He was always second fiddle to Rory. He was always second fiddle to Jordan Spieth. And he will now stay as the number 2 guy for the rest of his career, just like Greg Norman. It's kind of like enemy number 1 and number 2 is them. Like DJ, we kind of already knew what he's doing. He now has more snow than Aspen with $150 million that he's got. We don't really care about Dustin Johnson, but Phil Mickelson and Greg Norman are public enemy number 1 and 2, and they are basically on the shit list for everybody in America. And
it's odd because Phil was never that guy. Phil was always the guy that everybody loved. He was not, the Greg Norman, kind of like the villain of the sport, and I think that it's just so odd that that's the route that Phil is going to take, because what Phil said, those comments that he said to Alan Shipnuck about, there's, the comments that put him in exile for 4 months, they're scary motherfuckers, and they, and et cetera. And, why would this is an opportunity for, to change how the PGA Tour operates. But what the thing, I'm totally going on like a rampant here.
Yeah, no, of course.
But
fine.
But the whole thing is that Phil, like you said, he was always kind of the darling on the sport, and we didn't see him taking this route. Especially, he was going to be in the broadcast booth, like he's not going the route of Greg Norman. And now, and I thought, although those comments were reprehensible, I mean, they were terrible comments. I thought that there was some, especially because people love Phil, I really thought that there was a chance to kind of rectify the relationship, and it wasn't necessarily going to be tarnished. And obviously, when he went and officially joined LIV Golf, that didn't help. Today's press conference didn't help. So I still believe that there was a way out to kind of, let everybody forget about this controversy. Because you look at Tiger. I mean, Tiger did some terrible things, and we're not going to get into all of them. But he's still the darling of the sport. Everybody loves him, and people idolize him. And I thought that Phil made these comments, but maybe if he took a different route than the one he's going on now, he could still rectify the relationship with people. And right now, he's not doing himself any favors.
You bring up a great point, and I think we're going to transition following this. But Phil Mickelson, I'm going to use Tiger and like A-Rod as the two prime examples. Two guys who you and I have followed for our whole lives. You as a Yankee fan, me as a golf fan. Tiger and A-Rod are they're actually very similar when you think about it. Both did really bad things. Both managed to navigate and are now like darlings. A-Rod obviously is now in the booth for Fox. He's calling games. He's doing X, Y, and Z. And he's reinvigorated his career. Same with Tiger. Tiger had his infidelities. He's had his fair share of problems, but they always managed to come back into the public eye and look better. And I said this months ago when LIV was when LIV was first a thing, and I was like, look, people have very short attention spans. You ask like my brother who's 17 years old and doesn't totally watch golf, hey, what do you know about Tiger Woods? And he'll automatically bring up like, oh, Masters champion, absolute legend. Will he really know that he was that he had infidelities? Will he know Kobe Bryant had infidelities with his wife, and yet he managed to stay with her? Or A-Rod did PEDs? He didn't. He probably didn't even know that, and he's a huge basketball fan and didn't know about Kobe. But we have such short attention spans in the world. But this is something that it almost seems like you can't come back from it, and you don't see that very often because athletes have the press secretaries and people who are very good at dancing around these different things. It almost seems like we will never get a new Phil. We'll never see him back in the public eye this way again because this whole situation has gone so awry. I just don't think he can ever recover from this.
I'm not as confident to say that as you are. I believe there's still a route that he could take where he could possibly get out of this. But it's at this point, I mean, the window the door is essentially shut. I mean, if you really I won't even say like this week, but let's say, I mean, he could essentially next year decide I'm not going to play LIV, kind of maybe change everything. But it's not going to happen. So it's no point in me even going on about it. But
but also
he could go that route, but he's not going to.
But also, do we know for a fact that if he comes back and he says, "All right, I'm going to play on the Champions Tour," that Jay Monahan's going to even let him, considering his suspension? We don't really know. It's all speculation. We're going to move on from this, but there's still a lot of questions up in the air with Phil, and I think his career is tarnished. I think it's kind of over at this point. Stay and live, figure it out. But I want to actually talk about two things. One, first of all, we got to talk the RBC Canadian Open, because it was the best event of the PGA Tour calendar. I don't care what anybody else says; it was the best event of the freaking year. But also, I want to get into the idea that LIV Golf. I watched it on a Thursday at work, and it was a very slow work day. I turned it on. One of the girls that I work with, her husband is a golf pro, and she was like, "Oh, Steven, like, what do you know? What do you know about LIV?" My husband's texting me. He's like, "Oh, I hate this. This is horrible for the sport." And I was like, you know what? I've been watching this for about 25 minutes, and yeah, the morality of it is terrible. But looking back on it, LIV Golf in about a half hour managed to present to me the absolute best production value in a golf broadcast ever. LIV Golf did incredible. They had the F1 style leaderboard. You were able to keep track of it the whole way through. You saw every single player's shot. It didn't matter who it was. It could have been Andy Ogletree at 23 over par. It was fantastic how much actual coverage you got out of the golf source, and from really good angles. You got you had sky cameras. You had on the green from far away. You had so many great camera angles, and it was perfect. And while yes, LIV Golf has its morality problems, and it has the issues with the Saudis and all these different things, and I'm not going to take away from the fact that LIV is horrible for this reason. I do think, though, that there is a good in all of this. And I think that there's a good in the sense that the PGA now is set up with a situation where they need to learn from what LIV is doing and adapt to the change. The tour has been absolutely abysmal at its coverage. It's over at Golf Channel and NBC. But I'm not spending $70 a year to watch golf. I'm sorry. The money side of things is ridiculous. Yeah, I'm lucky that I have a ESPN Plus subscription and that I can watch PGA Tour live on that. But even then, the coverage is ass. You're watching featured groups, which honestly, I'm sorry. I get it. Phil's big. I don't want to watch Phil on Saturday at the Travelers Championship. I want to watch the guy who's in the lead. So you're stuck to watching featured groups, featured holes. I remember in April for the Masters, you could only watch the featured groups or holes 4, 5, 6, which was the par 3, par 5, par 3, or it was Amen Corner. That was it. You couldn't actually watch any of the real big time coverage. I remember watching. We used to do Sunday walkthroughs and watchovers. I remember the first event at Kapalua. Literally, the first event they had, they stopped the coverage at 17. Didn't even show you the 18th hole with Smith, Jones, and Rahm. Didn't do it. So I already have a gripe with what the PGA is doing, and also they own everything the players do. So it's a little unfair to the players. They can't actually monetize their own name. LIV I'm literally never going to be able to differentiate LIV and LIV. They're always going to be ahead of the game than what the tour is doing. And I think this is going to present a really good situation for the tour to try and adapt to change and grow. And there was an article by Dylan Dethier about the PGL, which a lot of people don't actually know about because LIV is overshadowing it. The Premier Golf League that was supposed to be essentially the backbone of LIV Golf, but never actually got the backing financially, so it never happened. And now apparently they want to join the PGA Tour and they want to make it better and destroy LIV Golf at its fingertips. That whole thing's going on. But regardless, this is basically a long way of me saying the PGA Tour is now in a crossroads where they really have to adapt and they have to grow to the changes that LIV's giving. Because I think LIV is actually the format, the style, the broadcast is all really good for golf.
Yeah. So two things there that I
sorry, that's like a bad tangent.
There was a lot there. But, okay, so what you first said, right? And now I sound like Phil Mickelson. One question at a time, please.
You ass.
With the first thing that you mentioned there, right? That you actually thought that the production was really good. I actually agree. I turned it on Thursday morning, and I was kind of surprised on how it was playing out. First of all, it's just so crazy because 10 days ago from when it started on Thursday, we didn't know the field. Like, I still was like holding out hope that like this thing was never going to happen because you just didn't know anything about it. And I was so shocked that it actually took off. You could actually watch it. They had legitimate broadcasting. They had a legitimate production value. There were legitimate players, maybe, more than my liking. So I watched it. But then here's the thing, which gives me some hope that this thing necessarily won't pan out, right? Is that no one, including myself, I believe, was watching it for the golf, right? Jay Monahan said it perfectly yesterday when he hopped in the booth with Jim Nantz. He said, our tour is about purpose and meaning. And I'll get into the RBC Canadian, and you will as well momentarily. But he said, our tour has purpose and meaning. There's no Charles Schwartzel, right? Who cares that he won? Rory winning the RBC Canadian Open is a big deal. If a lower name like Harold Varner got his first win there this weekend, or somebody along that nature, that's a big deal. But winning the LIV event is not. No one, I mean, I don't think, maybe someone, I don't want to say no one, but I certainly wasn't watching it because I wanted to see who would win, because I wanted to watch the golf. I was watching it to see, like, what the hell is this thing? And then after those 10 or 15 minutes ended of me looking at the screen and looking at the leaderboard and all that stuff, I didn't watch a second of it. And when they go to Pumpkin Ridge in 2 or 3 weeks, I'm most likely not going to watch any of it. If I do, it's not going to be more than 5 or 10 minutes of it. But so that's where I disagree with you, where yes, the production value is really good, but here's the thing, and I would love to, I've had this opinion for a while. I'll never put in like a column or anything like that, but I don't think, because there's millions of other things on my plate, I won't have that time. But if I were to write a column about this thing, I would want to write that the PGA Tour can take lessons from this, because I strongly believe that LIV Golf, right, the XFL, and if you guys have seen the XFL 30 for 30, right, the first Saturday night game, the ratings were massive, and then it cut into Saturday Night Live, right? So the ratings were massive. The next week it dropped so much. Same thing with that. What was that? The American Football League that happened in like 2018, 2019.
Yeah.
It was on CBS. I believe it was on Saturday night, right? First week, ratings, phenomenal. Second week, in the toilet, and then they didn't even make it past the first year. So I kind of believe that can happen. Very similar to the USFL, except, they don't have Donald Trump. They have Greg Norman, so, it's like tomato. But they don't, they don't have Trump, who's going to, ruin the league like he did with the New Jersey Generals, right? So I believe that, I believe that there is going to be failure for this, because yes, the Saudi investment fund has tons of money, but how sustainable is this? How long is this going to go on? Is it actually going to grow a fan base, or is it right now just a gimmick? Because that's what it felt like. It felt like a gimmick. The team logos were totally Madden, MLB The Show type of stuff. It was nothing that I'm interested in. It was nothing that I want to watch. I don't care. I mean, maybe if like Phil wins, you might be like, oh wow, Phil actually won something. But like, what's the difference if he wins out of the American Family Insurance Open on the Champions Tour, right? So actually, I would be more impressed if we won a Champions Tour event, to be honest with you. I actually don't mind watching that tour, but we won't get into that. But so and then going back off of the XFL. The XFL, right? The NFL adapted some of the things that they did better, because the production value, the entertainment value was better, right? Vince McMahon brought in different elements to the broadcast that the NFL was behind on. And when the XFL went bust, the NFL picked it up. So there's many things that they did. So I would hope that the PGA Tour, that anybody who broadcasts the PGA Tour, whether that's featured groups on ESPN Plus, all the major networks, right? They can adapt maybe some of the things that this tour is implementing on their broadcast, and make the viewing product better. The PGA Tour or any, I mean, if CBS and broadcasting the Masters, they make it better. So I believe that there's hope for that. Now, this part, which I've been waiting to say this the whole show. I don't know if I should say it now or I should say it when we get into the RBC Canadian Open. So where were you thinking of transition next to you?
Well, the one thing that I wanted to point out is that it does come down to the money. Obviously, over the last few days. Patrick Reed is now going over. He'll make about $140 million. Bryson's going over. He'll make $150 million. At what point does the money become too much? I don't know. I don't know how much money the Saudis have. The one thing that I can tell you is that the Saudi Public Investment Fund helped create Dubai and Abu Dhabi. That place went from a desert to a island paradise in about 3 years. So honestly, I don't know how much money they have. For all I know, they have $85 billion somewhere in the Swiss Alps in a bank that's just like sitting there and festering. I have no idea. All I know is that they're just gonna throw buttloads of money at now, according to Jay Monahan, terrorists like Lee Westwood and Ian Poulter to try and conjure up this tour. That, yes, you're right. It is almost like a gimmick, but it's a fun gimmick. It's something that is now actually presenting a counter initiative against the actual only established tour in pro golf. I don't know if it's gonna sustain. I think if the PGA Tour manages to adapt and grow their production value, then I don't really know. But quite clearly, if Charles Schwartzel can make more money in 3 days than the top 3 players at the RBC Canadian Open did, I mean, hey, it's more players are going to go to this. It's inevitable. Bryson's going, Patrick Reed's going. I guarantee you, by next week, probably after the U.S. Open, there will be 4 or 5 more top 50 players in the world that will in fact go to this tour. I cannot tell you who. I have no idea. Probably no one in the top 10 actively, because they're all PGA sympathizers, but I could probably find you 3 or 4 names somewhere in the top 50 who I can predict right now would probably go. And you look at it and probably say, oh, all right, yeah, actually, that kind of makes sense. Like Bryson, you kind of saw that one coming. You very well saw Patrick Reed coming, considering Patrick Reed is the villain of all villains. Let me just casually peruse this as I think. Who could possibly go to this tour? I don't know. Kevin Kisner? Someone who goes, hey, you make a lot of money for coming in 20th. Imagine what you can make 20th at LIV Golf. Adam Scott might go over, another aging European. You never know. You might see him there.
He was interested in Riviera. He said, he was thinking about it. So
yeah, exactly. Like there are plenty of guys who Jason Kokrak very well still might go. He was in the mix a while back. Even like Tyrrell Hatton stands out as someone who, the grumpy old man who for some reason is still a part of the PGA Tour despite everyone hating him. He very well might jump ship. And who knows? Maybe Brooks Koepka will go. If Brooks Koepka has a bad U.S. Open, who the hell knows? Maybe he's like, hey, screw this. Let's go play in Portland, Oregon, and win boatloads of money. I have no idea. But
yeah, weird because Brooks originally was hardcore PGA Tour, and now obviously his brother's playing on the tour. We'll see how much longer he lasts on that tour. But and then the Walmart brand Koepka. But that's someone to keep an eye on, just because I feel like now that there's more names. Hey, we'll have Brooks Bryson on the on the LIV Golf, on the LIV Tour. I still don't even know how to properly refer to it. It's like weird sometimes. I don't know, like LIV Golf, the LIV Tour.
The one thing that annoys me is like, we can go in and talk about the RBC Canadian Open because that's what the event is. What do we call every event? Oh, LIV Golf London, LIV Golf Portland. Yeah. Like there's no name behind it, so it's like, what do you call it? LIV Golf event number 2. like number 2, Roman numeral 2, LIV stands for 54. I don't know what anything means at this point. All I know is that some dude named and he's like the I'm not gonna say he's like the terrorist of the PGA, but like he's like the drunk uncle at a party that you kind of want him to shut up, but it's also kind of funny to see him fluster. Like Greg Norman to me is like the weirdest figurehead of all time, but also seems like the most appropriate. Just because, like, thinking about everybody involved in terms of past PGA professionals to take over this tour, he seems like the perfect guy to be doing it. I don't know. That's just me.
Yeah. I mean, of course, yeah, definitely. He's been trying to do this since the '90s, and then he did the whole thing. Arnold Palmer, I think he had him in a meeting, and Arnold Palmer stormed out. This has been Greg Norman's vision for 30 years, and the fact that it's actually coming to fruition is remarkable.
And so we'll see what the PGA Tour does. Let's actually transition out so we can get to that big point that you wanted. Rory McIlroy, man, the RBC Canadian Open was by far the best event of the year. 3 of the top 15 players in the world duking it out. 4 bragging rights going into the U.S. Open: Justin Thomas, Tony Finau, and Rory McIlroy. Biggest thing that I saw, aside from Rory McIlroy immediately calling out Greg Norman, saying, "Oh, win number 21 is one more than some other person," was the fact that the PGA put a video out showing everybody in the locker room, and Justin Thomas is a sock shoe guy and not a sock shoe guy. Kind of weird. Maybe it was only me who saw that odd and pointed it out, but at the same time, we now know that Justin Thomas is like one step closer to like serial killer status. But RBC Canada Open, what do you got from it? What's your biggest takeaway in the midst of this entire LIV Golf scandal? What stood out here this week?
So I strongly believe it was the best. It was the best tournament of the year, best watch. The fans
1,000%.
And anybody who says you don't need fans, it didn't matter during COVID. No, the fans for me, I believe, make it. That's what made Phil's win last year at the PGA so amazing, in my opinion. And you think about other instances. You think about Tiger at the Tour Championship in 2018. But point being, I mean, a great tournament. It had everything. It literally had everything. And it had a stacked leaderboard, a spirited crowd, and then it had a little tension with LIV Golf, and obviously with the comments that Rory made after his win. So going back, and this is the point I was trying to make earlier, is that earlier this week on Thursday during round 1, it felt like there was like a dark cloud over the. I felt weird. Like Thursdays honestly, round 1 is probably my. I mean, I only have 4 options, but one, if not my favorite round out of all of them. I don't know. I kind of like the idea of Thursday. I wake up in the morning, I put on featured groups, I follow it. Then I come back, you watch the afternoon groups. Usually you get a good player to come out at least for one round and play well, and you kind of build off of that. But I really like Thursdays, and I look forward to Thursdays. I look forward to the tournament of that week starting, and it felt weird on Thursday because it felt like for the first time ever that the golf world's eyes were not on the PGA Tour. They were somewhere else. They were, granted, they might be, on the DP World Tour, the LPGA, but they were on this weird Saudi-backed league, the LIV Golf, that everybody didn't know what it was, and then you started watching it, and then you were like, all right, this thing's like kind of legit, as we just discussed before. So but it just felt weird. Like I felt like doing my job, I felt awkward kind of talking about the PGA Tour regularly, blogging someone's round or getting hype about watching the event, because it just seemed like there was just a giant elephant in the room. It seemed like you couldn't talk about the PGA Tour event that week without thinking or discussing LIV Golf and what happened over there. Fast forward to Sunday, that all changed. I mean, yesterday I was watching the tournament. I was watching it all with. Saturday was great too. When Rory came on 16 to the ice rink, knowing the Sunday showdown that we were going to have, with Finau shooting a 62 on Saturday, it was a really, really good watch, and I was really excited, obviously, with that leaderboard for Sunday, and it friggin' delivered. The golf delivered, the fans delivered, as I just mentioned. And then, and watching it, and then with Jay Monahan too, I come back to that thought saying, this is better. I'm not compared to LIV doesn't mean anything. This was a really cool moment in the sport, and it really felt like they one-upped LIV Golf, in my opinion. And at the end of it, when they had when Rory made those comments, I thought to myself, the PGA Tour is going, maybe not at the moment, but it's going to come out of this better. Maybe this rivalry that between LIV Golf, like I mentioned before with the XFL, maybe the PGA Tour takes some pointers from LIV Golf and implements them into their own product. But at the same time, maybe this is a good thing. Maybe that's what got the juices flowing this weekend. Maybe that's why we saw the leaderboard the way it was, or at least, that's, Rory said he used it as an extra incentive. Heck, it might have worked. So I think that I really felt really pleased last night, knowing that, the tournament, in my opinion, was not watered down because of LIV Golf. It was a top flight event. It was a top flight watch in my opinion. I mean, not a top flight event in terms of the majors, but it was, I thought to myself, this was a great day in golf. It was a great tournament. And I think that part of it had to do because a lot of these players were trying to one up LIV Golf and show, hey, this is the place to play. This is the best atmosphere to play in. These are the best players. And think about another aspect is maybe low key. Now, there are some big losses with LIV Golf, but maybe low key, this is good in terms of the field. Get rid of some of these players. I mean, Dustin Johnson, with all due respect, bro, you haven't won anything since the Masters in November of 2020. I mean, I looked at the Fed. You realize in the FedEx Cup standings, he might be like 90 something or even over 100. I mean, he's been awful.
Yeah, it's not good.
He's not good, right? Kevin Na, like, sorry, bro, I won't be able to watch you, tie for second at the John Deere Classic once a year and then win the Shark Shootout, right? I mean, and some of these names, I mean, Phil had a magical moment at the PGA Championship, which is a moment that I loved, right? I think I said this last time I was on this podcast that I actually would put that over Tiger winning the Masters in 2019. Hot take. I'm aware of that. But he hasn't done anything since then. So maybe getting rid of some of these names that kind of pack the middle of the leaderboard. Maybe if we're watching Rory and JT and Finau and Scheffler go at it every single week, and you kind of get rid of some of the mess and make it a better product. I think that was another factor this weekend.
Yeah, what's crazy? I always talk about how there's so much parity in golf, and I use Finau as the example because prior to winning the Northern Trust, hadn't won since 2016, and it shows to how good the field is every single week. And you can even look at everyone who's won this year. Between Luke List, Tom Hoagie, you rattle off some of these random ass names that have won. It's kind of refreshing now. And obviously, as everyone knows, I love Bryson DeChambeau with my heart, soul, and everything a part of it. He's a bitch. I'm tired of Bryson DeChambeau. I am off the wagon.
Boy.
Dude, I love Bryson, and I am so discouraged.
Though. I think of all the names going back.
I don't think he was, though. Like, out of every single person, this is gonna be a ridiculous take, possibly. Out of every single person who left for LIV, Bryson's a loss because he's a personality, but the skill set is not there. He just bombs drives, all he does, but the ball goes 47 yards to the left, to the right or the left. It's like it's in Narnia every single time he goes out to play. He has not played well whatsoever.
Go ahead. So I won't interrupt. Go ahead.
Patrick Reed, whatever. Like, yeah, he's the villain, but he's washed. I'm tired of the act. It's over. Probably the only player that I'm actually discouraged left is Sergio and Taylor Gooch. Ian Poulter, fine. Screw you. Your pants can go somewhere else. Lee Westwood, you had a good 4 months last year. Take your ass back to England. Taylor Gooch had his first PGA Tour win, and I was like, all right, this kid's actually pretty damn good. And me and John have been going back and forth with hashtag Gooch Gang. We're all in on it. Like, he was a good golfer, and now Gooch is gone. Like, what the hell? And Sergio was the best Spanish player, aside from John Rahm, since Seve. He's incredible. And to lose him to this LIV Golf League, and now you're never going to see him again on a Ryder Cup team when he's so dominant, it's like it's blasphemous almost. Those are the two names that stood out to me. But you're right, cleansing the leaderboard almost. Matt Fitzpatrick talked about it today. They were like, "Oh, like, do you think your status is like higher?" He goes, "Yeah, because they're digging up the dregs, according to the as the English slang goes." Like, Matt Fitzpatrick hasn't won a golf event in his entire career, and yet I think he's probably one of the front runners this week to win the U.S. Open because of the fact that the field's lesser. We are going to actually get better fields now because of this, and we're going to get a lot of guys who don't want to go to LIV Golf because they want to make their killing on the PGA Tour. Will Zalatoris, Cameron Young, and now you're probably going to see some guys on the Korn Ferry Tour who are going to get promoted. And by the fall, once LIV Golf kind of has their full field, we're going to see a lot of really great players come out of this. And you look at the leaderboard from this past week: Rory, Finau, JT, Justin Rose, who literally said outright, "I don't care about Lee Westwood and Ian Poulter. I care about the PGA Tour." This guy is the biggest Englishman I know and said it with the biggest heart. I hate LIV Golf, and I love that. And the guy shot a 60 on the last day. The final round leaderboard, 62, 64, 64, 60, 62. It's like, what the hell was going on Sunday? It was incredible. Like, oh my God.
That's another thing. I didn't even mention that, how great the tournament was. I mean, we had a 58 watch.
Dude,
not even a 59 watch. 58 watch. I turned to a 59 watch.
Corey Connors, the low Canadian, finished 6th. Keith Mitchell, who I've been so bullish on all year, him and Chris Kirk both played incredible. Danny Lee, Shane Lowry, Fitzpatrick. Like, we're going to see such great tournaments now. And I wish the USGA didn't love stirring the pot, because they just simply wanted to get the LIV players in to just like stir the pot a little bit. But come following that, I'll probably wind up at the Travelers, and I'm sure I'll see you there. Like, that event, that event's going to be electric, because you're going to have the best players in the world that are going to play on it a week fresh off of a great event in Brookline, Mass. They're going to go a state over to Cromwell, Connecticut, and they're going to crush it. And LIV Golf. And LIV Golf's going to be in Portland, and no one's going to give a crap about it. It's going to be great. Sorry, what were you saying?
No, I'm just saying. I mean, honestly, I'm not going to lie. It's going to be a great event. Obviously, it's always a great event. I'm writing a feature about how it's a great event, and I asked Rich Hanley, our former professor, a couple questions. You know, he's been covering it since like the 70s. So anyway, but yeah, I was looking forward to seeing Bryson there, like, because he technically wouldn't be suspended yet. Well, no, he technically wouldn't be suspended yet. So he'd be playing knowing that he's going to LIV Golf the following week. It would have just stirred the pot. It would have just added another storyline. Now he's like being, he said today he doesn't want it to be a distraction. And I'm like, dude, you're always a distraction. So might as well just go all in one more time before you get suspended.
He is the definition of a walking distraction. I mean, like, you see Bryson DeChambeau, and first of all, the name jumps off the page because it's huge, and then everyone just goes freaking nuts because it's Bryson, and he drops bombs. Then again, so does Phil, and look at where he's wound up. Maybe Bryson has like the mid-30s crisis that like Phil has, and he'll just kind of get gray hairs everywhere, and it's going to be like, oh, hit bombs and drink Amstel Light all day long. Actually, no, he probably lost that sponsorship too. But whatever. The RBC Canadian Open was absolutely incredible. We loved it. We loved every second of it. We've gone on a insane tangent, 51 minutes in here. We got to take a short break, unwind, digest the info that we got. So yeah, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to give you all the info on the Country Club, Brookline, and is Francis Ouimet's story, played by Shia LaBeouf, the most overrated golf movie of all time? I think it very well might be, but we'll be right back. You are watching Get in the Hole from the Underground. Max, of all of the golf movies out there, how many have you seen?
I don't.
Any?
I mean,
Caddyshack?
Or Caddyshack, yeah. I can't really say I particularly like one.
Have you ever watched The Greatest Game Ever Played?
With Shia LaBeouf?
Yes.
No. I know what it is, but I ain't watching that. I mean,
okay. In the time-honored tradition of the U.S. Open, you need to watch the movie solely on the fact that they're playing at this golf course.
Yes. Well, have you ever read
despite that movie, they actually didn't play it at the Country Club, which is kind of dumb. They very well should have. Then again, Shia LaBeouf on a historic golf course like that probably wouldn't have been very good. I don't know.
Do you think he actually played, or did they get like a stunt double?
I mean, it looks like him. Like,
yeah, he like swung the club, and then they just like Photoshop, because he probably
Shia LaBeouf swinging a persimmon driver just like doesn't match up very well to me. Then again, like, you don't see him hitting the ball, like you see the forward angle, so you don't actually like see it like where the ball goes. You kind of just see it off the tee. So like, he probably golfed himself, unless they had like really good CGI in the early 2000s. I don't know what Disney is capable of doing at that point in time, but they made Secretariat look pretty cool. So I guess they made Shia LaBeouf look pretty solid too.
Disturbia.
So what is it?
Disturbia with Shia LaBeouf. It's a horror movie.
Of all the Shia LaBeouf movies, I think the only one that's like worth actually talking about is Holes.
Holes is a little weird. It's a little corny.
Oh, come on. It's a great movie.
I liked it when I was a kid, but if I saw it now, I wouldn't stop and watch it.
it's always on like ABC. Well, actually, what's now Freeform. It's like always on Freeform. I don't know why. It's like that and Harry Potter movies. It's just always there.
Yeah, I'd rather
But
flick up to go to E Network and watch She's Out of Your League for the 79th.
What a great movie. I'm watching that tonight when I go before bed. That's amazing. I haven't watched the movie in years, dude.
Speaking of bed, I'm gonna go after this, so maybe we should get into the U.S. Open stuff.
Yeah. All right. So, anyways, the greatest game ever played is the most overrated golf movie of all time. Caddyshack's the best, and then Tin Cup, solely because the guy's last name is McAvoy. Anyways, Course Confidential, right? The Country Club. We're going to Brookline, Massachusetts for the U.S. Open. I don't even know what year it is in terms of numbers of U.S. Opens that have occurred, but we're dating all the way back to the 1910s with Princess Amet, so it's very clearly over 100. The Country Club will play host to the U.S. Open, one of the best events on the PGA Tour calendar. We have a little bit of talk to do about it in terms of what the actual course will provide, but obviously you and I are more so journalists talking about the actual event and what's to come. We'll talk about some keys to victory, how to play. We'll give you some betting looks in about 20 minutes at the top of the hour, and we'll be able to figure out a couple of things to look at in terms of what to expect at Brookline. But let's start off with this. We're going into this event. We already know kind of the story here, at least now with Phil and the whole LIV thing, and Dustin Johnson will tee it up. We're going to assume some others will as well, all those guys that have exemptions and pre-qualified. What do you expect should come down at the Country Club this week in terms of LIV Golf versus the PGA, and what to expect from all of these guys going from London back to America for a 1 week short stay?
Like, you mean, how do I think they're going to fare?
Yeah. Or also, or really just like the vibe with all these like players coming back. Do you think there will be quasi animosity between the guys like JT and Rory against those guys? Like, obviously they didn't say it in their pressers. They were like, oh yeah, like I'm not gonna hate DJ because he went to this tour, but there's gonna be some sort of a distaste in everyone's mouth.
And that's why I think that this thing overall, although it's not good for the game, I still think in the end it's going to put the sport maybe in a better place. Because I think the juices, getting the juices flowing is a good thing, right? I mean, we saw it last year with Brooks Bryson. That kind of galvanized the sport. That made the sport go mainstream. It was on SportsCenter. It was in on ESPN.com, on Sports Illustrated. It made the sport. That was a storyline that went mainstream just outside of the golf world. So rivalries are good for the sport, right? And with working at Golf Channel, right? Every time that there's a story regarding controversy, it does well. People love controversy. People love stuff like that. Obviously, the Brooks Bryson stuff last year, all that stuff killed it. That little dispute with DJ and Na, right? At what was it, Pebble Beach, right? Yeah, right. I think so. And I remember when every year at the end of the year, golfchannel.com publishes they just post the top 15 most read stories of the year, and that one was like 4 or something. The Grayson Murray, Kevin Na stuff that's been happening this year. I've had that opportunity.
Murray, what a joke.
But
what an absolute joke of a person, golfer, everything in between.
Yes, but he did that whole thing with Kevin Na, right? That stuff kills it. People love that story. So, anytime there's controversy, that's overall it kind of gets the juices flowing. It's in a way I think it is good for the sport. So, but then of course you don't want it to become bad. You don't want to be straight up like the way Brooks last year was just straight up bullying Bryson. Like the PGA Tour has to step in and be like, hello, this isn't good. But anyway, so yeah, I think there'll be a little bit of some animosity. Maybe we'll get a couple pairings. It really kind of just depends how the weekend goes, because I could see both cases scenario. I could see it like last week where, maybe it casts a shadow over the tournament on Thursday, and by the time we get to Sunday, everybody forgets about it. Or maybe you get a pairing. Let's say like on Sunday, you get Rory and JT. Not Rory and JT. Rory and DJ. There could be some juice there if they're going head to head in one of the final groups. Trying to win the U.S. Open, like that might be good. So, that's really where 2 avenues I could see it going down.
Before we get into the actual course talk, Grayson Murray and Kevin Na sharing a locker stall. What do you think?
Yes, that's wild. I can't believe it's honestly it's funny.
Again, the USGA loves to stir the pot. They're just going to keep on doing it. At this point, they'll put Brooks and Bryson in the same pairing on
they're clowns.
On Thursday.
They're funny.
they're creating stories. They want it.
They had the what year was it? They did like the all like fat threesome with like Shane Lowry and I forgot who else was in it, but
oh god, it was it was Lowry. Was it Harry Higgs? I think it was Higgs.
No, this was years ago. This was a lot. This was like 2012 or something.
Yeah, no. I gotta think of. Yeah, find me that. We're gonna talk a little bit about what to expect here at the Country Club. I've got a bunch of stuff here for our Course Confidential. We're gonna go with the Steve's keys to victory in Brookline this week. I have a couple of notes. I played the golf course before, so I know I know some things about it. So actually, my little insight here is, I am a friend of mine, college roommate from Brookline, Mass, invited me out. We played my sophomore year of college. I shot like a 170. Was not very pretty. I also wasn't really good at golf at that point, so whatever. But from what I remember, going back about 6 years, first of all, the rough this week is thickums. It is big time. It's engulfing. You need like a Manscaped lawnmower to even get through it. So the rough's very penalizing as a number one priority, as like most majors. I feel like the rough's always a challenge. Honestly, winged foot was a problem for a lot of guys, but I walked through every single hole and I was thinking about it, and I watched the flyover and I was finding like small things that I noticed. All 18 holes, very challenging golf course, like overall. They played here for the U.S. Amateur a few years ago, or I think it was last year, and we saw that was the tournament that I saw a lot of players taking very different angles to holes. I remember there was one amateur who on the 18th hole played the 9th fairway to get there. You might very well see guys like Victor Hovland doing that, considering he's a stickler for that. So you very well might be seeing alternate routes to holes as kind of the way to go. The opening hole, pretty moderate length, narrow fairway, probably going to have a 7-iron to the green. This is a big time second shot course that's going to be really important. 3 par 3s, very small greens throughout the entire golf course. These par 3s are going to be crucial in order to get it there. All within about 180 to 220 yards, with one par 3 about 40 feet of elevation downwards. So really, it's only playing at about 140 of good a good gap wedge for a lot of these guys. The par 5s are very challenging. There's two specifically that are a problem. The 8th hole is the first par 5 of the golf course, elevated green, about 210 yards, following a roughly decent 320-yard drive, which is about average on tour. So most will probably pull long iron here. Very, very tiny green, bunker surrounding. The other par 5 of this course, the 14th, 609 yards. She's a behemoth. Straight on tee shot. Second shot's uphill and almost impossible to get there in 2. Might be seeing some guys pull out driver off the deck. We saw Francis Summit do that a long time ago with this Persimmon Wood. Then again, that par 5 was 200 yards shorter back in 1910. So who knows? Very well might be seeing a lot of guys struggling to get there in 2. So this is going to be a golf course where, and like most U.S. Opens, par is the key. You're not really going for birdies. You might see a winner at 7 under par, for all you know. When John Rahm won at Torrey Pines, it was 8 under was the winning score that week, and 3/4 of the field were in the plus numbers for the entirety of the week. I'm pretty sure at the U.S. Open last year, only 7 players finished below par on the weekend. So it's going to be a very challenging golf course. The keys this week are very simple. Stroke gained approach will always stand as the number one tool. The greens are very small, but they are also undulated. So it isn't necessarily a putting game, but it's really a finesse game. Second shot course, strokes gained approach. Strokes gained ball striking will be prominent. Strokes gained birdie or better will be very important because you're going to want to get the opportunities in bunches if you could. It'll certainly be very challenging. So for those guys who are able to stick it and have those quality one putts, Cam Smith, I'm looking at you, as you always play very well in majors, will be prominent this week. But it's really just the ball striking game that's going to be so important, and those are really my keys essentially to the victory here at the Country Club. Max, let's kind of get you back into the mix here. Some guys going into this event who are playing pretty well, who we think will have a impact in terms of coming out. Maybe played well last week, played pretty poorly last week. Who will be able to come out hot? It's our edition of Whomst is hot and Whomst is not. Max, give us some guys who are hot and cold going into the U.S. Open.
So one I would have to say is Will Zalatoris. Obviously, he's been playing pretty well since losing in the playoff at the PGA. So stat here that I have from today is he has last year he missed the cut at Torrey Pines, but that was his only finish in a major outside the top 10 in his seven majors, and he was tied for sixth at Winged Foot in 2020. I would say Winged Foot is a better comparison on what you're going to see this week at the Country Club to then Torrey Pines. So he's someone that I would definitely keep an eye on for this week. And someone else I'm looking at now. This is kind of cliche, but Scotty Scheffler. I know he's the world number one, but I think you look at the courses that he won on this year, right? Phoenix. Or Scottsdale rather, and then Bay Hill, Austin, right? These are big boy courses, and the Country Club is a big boy course. So I think that he's shown that he could be competitive. That 6-week run was not just a fluke. I mean, yes, he lost in the playoff at Colonial. That's another big boy course, flat, but a big boy course. So he's someone I'm looking at. I think that we haven't seen someone win 2 majors in a year since Brooks Koepka in 2018. So I think that if someone's going to do it this year, it could be him. I do like JT, although I am right now more inclined to take JT at St. Andrews than I would this week at the Country Club.
Absolutely. I think this week, after seeing what Rory McIlroy did at the RBC Canadian Open, it's another one of those weeks where you see someone who played really good the week prior, and you're like, oh, do I want to take Rory this week? Because God knows what's going to happen. And I said this for the PGA, and it almost happened. He finished 6th. Where Rory's so good at like backdoor top 5s, like he could be awful for the first 2 days, make the cut, and then all of a sudden just go off. Rory's the guy that I'm keeping my eyes on. Obviously, he's as hot as could be. It also helps that Rory plays his best golf in dogfights with the best players in the world. When he isn't playing the best players at a given time, he just simply crumbles. And I don't know if it's like the mama mentality that he's got, or it's just the fact that he just like doesn't play well around guys who are really good. I really don't know. But Rory's someone that I'm looking at this week. Someone who's actually been really cold that I actually think may have a really good shot this week. And this is going to sound crazy, but you go down the leaderboard here and you're getting down like Corey Connors, like plus 4,800. There's one name that stands out this week. He hits it super straight. He hits it pretty damn far. He has a good putter. He has a good iron game. Daniel Berger, since his play at the Honda, has not played particularly well in any way, shape, or form. He's plus 5,000 right now on just about any sportsbook you can find him on. He's somebody who, despite not playing very well, has a very good track record in majors, particularly after not playing well weeks prior. So Berger's one of those guys I'm looking at. Brooks Koepka is a little bit above him at plus 4,400, which is a ludicrous number for someone who, over his last like 6 majors, has beaten 66 out of 69 players in the field every single year. He's always really good in majors, despite him not necessarily showing it in terms of the win column. Obviously, he had back-to-back wins in 2018, 2019. But at the same time, I think this is really a event for him that'll it's a get right event because it fits his game very well. He's a very narrow golf player, and he's able to kind of keep the peripherals down the line. Cameron Smith, despite not having the greatest week at the RBC, he played absolutely terrible on day 1. Day 2 went like 6 under par to barely make the cut, and he finished around even par for the week, which is good enough for a top 50 placement. Not bad for someone who was like 6 over after day 1. He's a plus 2,100. Stat that I found really interesting. Of the last 9 winners of the U.S. Open, they had four commonalities in terms of players coming in this week. They all had a top 5 finish going in. So at some point this season, finished top 5. They've all won 2 or less majors. They had placed top 10 in one of the last 8 U.S. Opens or majors in general. And all of them made the cut at the previous tournament, terms of major. 4 names fit the criteria. Specifically, Xander Schauffele, Max Homa, very odd, Shane Lowry, and Jon Rahm. I think this might be the week Xander Schauffele finally gets his first major victory. I think this is it. This might be the place. There are 5 names that I'll be betting on, and I'll be talking about it more at BeerMoney in about 20 minutes. But Xander Schauffele is one of the guys that I am very confident, very well might do something that none of us have ever seen. And it's win in front of a packed crowd in a loaded field at the one event that's probably, when you think about it, the hardest one to win because the U.S. Open is so big in America. Augusta's one thing. The PGA is probably the worst of the four. And the Open is a whole different animal because it's usually in England, Scotland, somewhere in Europe that is very different, the style of golf in terms of like links golf versus everything else in Europe than it is in America. The U.S. Open is probably the hardest major to win at because it fluctuates every single year, and they always made the conditions incredibly challenging. I think Xander Schauffele is a great play here. He's been shaky, hasn't been great, but in his majors, obviously, you can never count him out for anything worse than a top 10. So I think he really kind of fits the mold here just about perfectly.
Yeah, I mean that's something I could see. Although I'm not super confident on taking Xander. I know last time I was on this program, he just won with Patrick Cantlay at the Zurich Classic, and we were talking about whether or not that's a Mickey Mouse win. You know, what type of player is he? Obviously, a lot of his wins have come with asterisks, so not literally. So, but yeah, I mean, you know, he's been there before. 2020 Masters, right? You know, or 2021 rather. We've seen it before. Max Homa is someone I can really see contending. I know he hasn't been great in majors, but I think now, you know, he's laid out the groundwork. You know, he's got a couple wins under his belt, and I definitely think that he's someone that can contend this week. I mean, Brooks is interesting because going into this year or going into major championship season, let's say around the Players, I would say, I thought that Brooks and Patrick Cantlay were shoo-ins to win majors this year. I thought Brooks didn't look great, but I know how he operates in majors. I saw enough signs of him, you know, showing that his game is still there, right? You know, second or third in Phoenix. You know, I remember he shot a 65 on the last day at Valspar. Like, it just seemed like there were signs that his game was turning a corner and that he was healthy. Now I'm a little skeptical. He hasn't looked great the past, you know, couple of months, but someone definitely I never count him out in a major. I know last year, I don't know how this has evolved, but there was a stat that like he had the lowest under par total since like 2017 by like 50 or 30 strokes or something like that.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, over Dustin Johnson, who was second. So never count him out. And Patrick Cantlay, you know, he hasn't been great, but like he won at Zurich. I mean, he was in a playoff against Spieth, you know, at RBC Heritage at Hilton Head. So another person, I wouldn't count him out. He just kind of needs that get right week, and you know, I think it's kind of hard to do that in a major, but he's been one of the top players in the world. So there's no reason to you definitely absolutely can't count him out.
Is it too crazy to think we might see another Rory / JT Sunday back to back?
I feel like it's too good to be true to say that, but I wouldn't say no.
Although honestly, I think a Rory DJ final day would probably be the greatest thing of all time.
Well, yeah, I mean that would be like that's like when Phil and Tiger were going at it back in the day. You know,
like Rory talking smack in his accent, which by the way, like I can listen to it all day long and not get tired of it. I love his accent. Rory or JT, I feel like have like that underpronounced fire where like if DJ like said something under his breath or like something happened where there was some comment about like LIV Golf, and I could see someone throwing expletives and it gets like very like feisty, and we don't see that like in golf. I kind of want to see a hockey match like fight almost break out, but like in like verbal abuse on a golf course. That'd be incredible. The mental agony that Dustin Johnson can put Rory McIlroy through and vice versa would be absolutely hilarious for a Sunday at Brookline. It would be wild. We're going to take a short break. Once we come back, one more time, beer money time. We're going to give you our best outright picks and a couple of fun props this week at the Country Club. We'll be right back, folks. Everyone's favorite time of the podcast. It's time for some beer money, brought to you by our friends over at Kenwood Beer. Kenwood Beer, Philadelphia's #1 favorite light beer. Max, let's grab a Kenny and let's get right into it. Some outright bets this week. We talked a little bit about the field, who we think will play really well. But looking at the odds boards, guys who are high up, guys who are pretty low down, we'll talk long shots, we'll talk prop bets. Give me some outrights that you're looking forward to this week and the odds that you think could bring home some pretty good money for our viewership.
You know what? Let's see what you say first, and then I'll counter.
All right, so I have 4 outrights that I'm going to go with this week. I've been pretty good. I bet JT and Sam Burns this past week. Both of them finished top 5. I took them for a win and top 5. They cashed in those 2, but the win came a little too close. I'm going to go with 4 guys here. Xander Schauffele, like I mentioned, plus 2,100. I think is a really good play here. I'm not going to take Rory and JT and Rahm and Scheffler just because the money simply isn't there. I'm going to kind of dig a little deeper. Back in January, I said Jordan Spieth was going to win the U.S. Open. That was my way too early prediction. I've gone over 2 so far in the majors. I thought Rahm would win the Masters. That failed. Thought Cantlay would win at Southern Hills. That failed. And I'm kind of fading Jordan Spieth right now solely on the fact that he hasn't shown me much outside of Sundays that he can really perform. So I'm not going to stick there. I think Xander at 2,100 is a pretty good play. 21 to 1. Matt Fitzpatrick at 25 to 1. He shined at the RBC, and he also shined really well at the Memorial. I think it was largely because of the fact that the fields were shrinking because of LIV Golf. He's really kind of finding his niche within the PGA Tour, and I think this is a great week for him to get right, get his stuff going. The Brooklight Country Club is very much like a link-style golf course. For those of you who've been living under a rock, link-style golf course obviously is the big thing in England, in Scotland, where golf was developed, where it's very much wide open area, not as woody as you would expect. Brookline is obviously very, very heavily woodlands, but the design and the undulations and the hills involved at Brookline is very links course style. So I think this is kind of this is going to be a hit home kind of golf course for Matt Fitzpatrick. I have a history of calling out Fitzpatrick because he's the ugliest guy on the planet. I still think he's going to play really well this week, despite my hatred for his looks. I'm going to keep rolling with Sam Burns. I took him the last 3 weeks. He's been on fire. Probably the 3rd best player in the world right now that isn't named Justin Thomas and Rory McIlroy. And probably Patrick Cantlay is kind of in that mist. Also Cameron Smith. He's been on fire. He's won a pair of events this year. And he simply is incredible on the putting greens. You're going to need to find someone who will putt well. I'm also going to run down the leaderboard a ways. I'll probably throw money on Koepka plus at 44 to 1. It just kind of seems too good. I'm so bullish on Cameron Young at 4,400 as well. I really like his odds too. And let me give you a big long shot. Let me kind of look down here. Wow, Bryson's 130 to 1. That's wacky. I have never seen Bryson DeChambeau so low on a leaderboard. When you see Bryson DeChambeau's name lined up next to Gary Woodland, Siwoo Kim, and Sebastian Munoz, I get nervous. Do I throw a little bit of money on Bryson for the off chance that he can manhandle this golf course? They said you couldn't drive Winged Foot, and they're saying you can't outdrive Brookline. I don't know. But you know what? Here, someone who's really low on the leaderboard, but has played really well. KH Lee, 210 to 1. He played phenomenal when he won or came close to winning a few weeks ago.
No, he won. Yeah, Byron Nelson.
Yeah, he won the Byron Nelson. He played really well. It's a very simple golf course that he won at. But at the same time, though, I don't know. Something good. He's been playing sneakily well the entire year. I think KH Lee is a pretty good sleeper pick. So those are going to be the guys that I'll be betting on this week. Might also throw a little bit on the Colin Morikawa just because the money there is too good. The take-home bet, the best bet that you can put the 401k on, is another Shane Lowry top 25 in a major. It's happened like the last 9 majors, so why not take it again? Shane Lowry for top 25.
Yes, interesting. You mentioned Morikawa, totally under a storyline that's just kind of really not been talked about a lot during the season. He has not been good this year. I mean,
it looks like he hasn't pitched.
He's going to be fine, but
it looks like he hasn't touched a putter in 3 months.
Yeah,
he goes out to putt and he looks like Phil in the presser. Like he's just like he's nervous. Like it freaks me out. Like the guy's his iron play is incredible. He's dialed in, but the second he hits the putting green, it's like what the hell's going on? It's like scary. Also, for that same reason, I actually might also throw some money on Zalatoris. He could ball strike his way to a win here this week. Wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I agree. Zalatoris is someone definitely keep your eye out. As I mentioned before, someone who's coming in, he's hot. He didn't play well at the USM when it was there in Brookline in 2013, but maybe that kind of works to his advantage. Kind of figure it out by then. But a couple of names I'm looking at here: Davis Riley, right? He's been on a friggin' heater, right? Lost in the playoff at the Valspar, then tied for 4th at Zurich. Mexico Open, he was 5th. AT&T Byron Nelson, he was 9th. Charles tied for 13 at the PGA Championship, then tied for 4th at Colonial, and then tied for 13th at the Memorial. However, he did have a share of first place after 18 holes. So he has been playing unreal golf. So he's someone that I'm definitely keeping my eye on. Maybe a top 20, but top 10 is some, if you're really feeling a little risky, I don't think that's out of the question. And the same goes for Cam Young. I mean, Cam Young has showed up at a lot of these big boy events this year, right? He's probably going to win Rookie of the Year. Steve, I think you're frozen. You are not.
No.
I'm seeing things. But he has showed up. I mean, Riviera, PGA Championship. He's playing his way to Rookie of the Year. So I think Brookline, another test. Northeast. He's from Sleepy Hollow, New York. I don't know how comparable it is to his father's course, Sleepy Hollow Country Club, but I definitely he's someone I'm definitely looking at for a top 10 this week. Another name to keep an eye on, Joaquin Niemann. I'll pull up his past performance, but another guy, he showed up, he showed he could play, he shows up on these big boy courses, so he's someone that I'm looking at. And then, not to be too cliche, but obviously we were talking about him before, Tony Finau. I mean, he only has 2 wins. He finally got that big win at the Northern Trust, which is a major field. I mean, that's top 50 of the FedEx Cup standings. I mean, that's not like that's not like winning the Rocket Mortgage Classic. No disrespect to Detroit Golf Club, but that, and so he has been on a heater though, as we talked about before. Runner up in Mexico, which was not a great event, but then I just had his stats up before, but and of course I click off of them to look on Joaquin Niemann's. But I mean, he's been hot. Obviously, last week shot a 62, and then you look at Joaquin Niemann, right? Genesis, he won obviously, and then he was just tied for 3rd at the Memorial 2 weeks ago. Mayakoba, probably the best field of the fall, tied for 5th. So he's shown that he could play. Farmers Insurance, another top 10. So he's someone tied for 23 at the PGA Championship. So maybe he's kind of licking his chops from that, and I expect him to have a good week this week.
I conjured up a 6-leg parlay here for top 20s. The payout on a $10 bet is about $1,700. Top 20s: Davis Riley, Cameron Young, Fitzpatrick, Zalatoris, Koepka, and Niemann. For all of them to finish top 20 for $1,700, I don't know. I might throw a couple dollars on that. That sounds like really.
How much is $1 payout?
$170.
It might be worth it. It's tough though. I mean, it was one of those guys that's going to have a bad week.
I'm a firm believer of I'd rather spend $1 on a bet that'll pay out big than spend $1 on a lotto ticket.
Yeah,
I would happily donate to any sports book for $1 if it means the payout ridiculous, than to do anything else of that sort. Let's get into some prop bets this week before we get going. Some fun props that you'll be able to find, brought to you by our friends over at Pickup. Pickup, play the headlines today and get betting on the Pickup app. Max, looking at some sports books and looking at some of the prop bets that we'll see, are there any that kind of stand out to you?
I don't know. I haven't looked at any.
All right. Well, we'll look at them right now. I absolutely hate you for doing this. For doing this.
I thought you were going to give them to me.
No. All right. Here. Fine. I totally will. This is an interesting one to have a bogey-free round this tournament. Who do you think any player stands out? I'll give you the odds for them if you bring them up.
I mean,
A singular bogey-free round. Like that sounds
one
like kind of.
okay, one bogey-free round.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a JT vehicle.
Plus 430 sounds intriguing enough to me.
Yeah.
Is there anybody that you think could be the possible first round leader? These always pay out huge.
Sung Jae Im.
Sanjay M. Where is he right now? Plus 5,000 first round leader. Sounds fascinating. You know, Mito Pereira plus 5,500. That sounds pretty interesting. Dustin Johnson's plus 55. Let's see who else. Joel Damon. How's Joel Damon higher up on this board than like Russell Henley or Gary Woodland, former U.S. Open champion? That sounds a little off-putting to me. All right, here we go. Because these are all insane. Players to shoot a hole in one. Do you think anybody has a chance? There's one par 3 that plays to about like 140 yards because it's like 40 feet downhill. Anybody that might tickle your fancy?
That could be
has a history.
That could be anybody. I don't.
Could literally be anybody. But the fact that I could take probably. Let me try and find him. Justin Thomas.
Someone
considering he had like 3 shots that were super close. Like everyone is at least like 100 to 1 to have a hole in one. So Jim Furyk 150 to 1. That sounds fun.
He had one at Sony this year.
You never know.
He didn't have one before that since 2011.
I think so.
How about I don't know. I mean, this is just anybody's guess. Like
Sam Horsfield.
How about a LIV guy? Just to stir the pot.
Louis?
Yeah. Oh, another pick I didn't mention about Hideki Matsuyama. I think watch out this week.
Ooh, Hideki Ma. You know, Hideki's been so hit or miss for me. I can't like I take him and then like he goes 4 over. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I just like I can't trust you anymore. It just doesn't make sense to me anymore. Final prop before we go. This is actually one that really really kind of gets me going. They have props for top Englishman, top European overall. Is there any bet that you think might stand out as someone top Asian player in the field? Anybody who you think might very well be top of the board for a certain nationality prop?
So a nationality prop top of the board?
Yeah.
Neiman.
Neiman top South American?
Yeah, I would say.
At like minus 500 against.
I would take Munoz in that category as well, I think.
So as of right now, top South American is Neiman plus 110, Pereira plus 165, and Munoz plus 360. So
I would take Munoz plus 360.
All right, very nice. All right, that's going to do it all for us on the impromptu prop side, and that's going to do it all for us here on the Get in the Hole podcast. Max hopping in for John tonight. Max, thank you so much for coming in. Give me that plug. It's time for final thoughts. Plug everything that you do. Give us a take that you have, something to go out on a high note with.
Final thoughts is that I don't have a thought.
All right. Well, plug your blog. Plug everything you do for NBC Golf. Give us the whole rundown.
Plug. All right. We got a big week coming up. I'll be
kind of.
I probably won't be doing much writing. We got 3 guys out there: Ryan Lavner, Rex Hoggard, and Brentley Romine. So we're gonna have tons of good content. Of course, back at the desk, me and my coworkers and the other editors. So it should be a fun week, and expecting a lot of good storylines, especially with the U.S. Open. There's always tons of good storylines. Especially the guys that get in, the people that qualify. It's always a fun week. I would say, Steven, let me ask, what would you say your number one major is? Like, what do you not necessarily what you think, but what do you think is if you were to survey people, what would be their number one major? And he's frozen.
Sorry, I kind of lost you. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh, you lost
My
it.
my internet.
Maybe that's so cute to end it.
Yeah, my internet just like. Yeah, no, my internet just hardcore took a nosedive. Of course, in the final 30 seconds of the show.
Maybe
my final thought here, I think
Go.
maybe it is. I'm gonna give my final take here, and then we'll go. I think LIV Golf is really good for golf. I think it's going to be a driving force to help the PGA grow. I think the PGL and the people over at the Premier Golf League who wanted to do exactly what LIV Golf is doing will, in fact, come out on top and help out the PGA to create a brand new product. We're going to have more 54 hole event golf events on the PGA Tour. We're going to have more non-stroke play style, more team events, and you very well might see a team style come into play. I think at the end of the day, this will all transpire and create a possible scenario where we'll see the PGA versus LIV in a Ryder Cup style winners tour goes kablowmy. I think it's going to happen, and we'll see the best PGA players versus the best LIV players. We'll have Rory versus DJ. We'll have Brooks versus Bryson. It'll be an absolute showdown. It'll be bigger than Jesus Christ versus the devil. It's going to be absolutely gigantic. I think it's going to be the absolute show of the century whenever it happens, if it ever does happen. And Greg Norman will probably die in the pit of fire. So we'll see what happens. But that's going to do it all for us on the Getting the Home podcast. Max Schreiber, you can follow him at Max Schreiber 13. Go check him out with NBC Golf and Golf Channel. Absolutely incredible stuff from his blogs. Just about anything you want to find, you'll probably find his name head on just about everything. Thank you again for following us here. We will be back next week talking all things U.S. Open, and of course, we're going all the way down to the best string of golf on the PGA calendar. There's only 12 weeks left until the playoffs. It seems like it's so far away, but really it's so close. Thank you for joining us here on